The Grand Chamber of the Aegis was a masterpiece of alien engineering, designed to hold 50 species in a space that felt both vast and suffocating. The air was a soup of different smells: the sharp ozone of the electrical beings from Lyra, the damp mossy scent of the amphibious core, and 100 other unidentifiable odors. In the middle of it all, Kim Jun tried very hard not to sneeze. He was a thin man with a calm face, dressed in the simple gray uniform of a human cultural observer. Next to him, Lee Mina tapped her datapad nervously. Across the round platform, their boss, Ambassador Park Dae, was speaking. His voice was smooth and confident, full of the careful words of diplomacy. The Human Federation believes that leadership should be decided by logic and proven strategic skill, Park Dae said, his hands open in a peaceful gesture. We have detailed files on cooperative military maneuvers. We suggest a merit-based system. A low clicking sound answered him. It came from Kaya, the representative of the Silithid swarm. She looked like a praying mantis made of polished black crystal. Her head tilted. Merit. Logic. These are tools. They are not the foundation. Her voice was translated by the small device on her chest, sounding dry and without emotion. In the dark, when machines fail, only instinct remains. The being whose instinct is strongest must lead. The Alpha must lead. This is the first rule of the Conclave for hazardous operations. A grunt of agreement came from Vor of the Hroth. He was massive, covered in thick brown fur, with shoulders wider than June was tall. He looked like a wise, speaking bear. The Ghost Nebula eats computers, Vor rumbled. It twists sensors. You will be blind. In the blind dark, you do not want a logician. You want a being who knows, in its blood, how to survive and make others survive. The meeting was about the Ghost Nebula. A strange and powerful object had been found deep inside it. The nebula was a dangerous place of strange radiation and chaotic energy fields. It broke technology. Sending a team in would be very risky. All 50 species of the Galactic Conclave wanted a share of what was found, but they could not agree on who should command the mission. For years, the Silithids had held the title of Alpha Species. Their hive-minded hunting tactics were legendary. But now, with such a valuable prize, other species were challenging them. The Hroth, with their incredible endurance and tracking skills, wanted the role. So did the swift, venomous SS Lith and the telepathic but fierce Gora. The argument had been going on for days. Each species described why their predatory nature was the best. They talked about ancient hunts on their home worlds. They showed recordings of great battles. The human delegation listened and tried to talk about teamwork and planning. No one listened to them. Humans were new to the Conclave. They were seen as clever, good at building things, and oddly good at working together. But in the eyes of the older species, humans were prey animals. They had no natural claws, no venom, weak senses. They were clever herd creatures, nothing more. June watched it all. His job was not to speak, but to observe. He was a xenocultural anthropologist. He took notes on how the different beings interacted. He saw the subtle signs. The way Vor's fur would bristle just before he argued. The faint color changes in the Gora's skin when they were lying. The almost invisible antennae twitches of the Silithids when they were annoyed. Right now, he saw frustration. The meeting was going in circles. "Enough talk!" boomed a voice from a scaled, lizard-like being, a tar. "We all know the old way, the ritual of recall. Let it decide." A tense silence fell. June glanced at Mina. She looked pale. "What is the ritual of recall?" she whispered to him. June scanned his data pad quickly. "It's an ancient ceremony," he murmured back, "from when the Conclave was first formed. To avoid war over leadership, they agreed. Each species must share the oldest, most powerful hunting memory from their racial history. Not a story, but a sensory memory, passed down through genetics or shared consciousness. The species with the most potent, most primal instinct is named Alpha. Mina's eyes widened. "We don't have that. We don't share genetic memories." On the platform, Ambassador Park Dae was trying to protest. "The Human Federation respects tradition, but we are a species of individual experience. We do not possess such a racial memory. We offer instead our historical records. Your records are lies, hissed the SS Lith representative, a coiled serpentine creature. Words can be crafted. Instinct cannot. If you have no recall, you have no instinct. You cannot lead. You can only follow or be left behind. The message was clear. Without participating in the ritual, humanity would be shut out of the mission and the artifact's benefits. They would remain at the bottom. Overlooked, Kaya stood, her long limbs unfolding. The tar is correct. The law is clear. We will perform the ritual of recall. Now, her multifaceted eyes scanned the room. Let the truth of flesh and tooth decide who leads us into the dark. One by one, the other species agreed. There were nods, flashes of light, rumbles of approval. Park Day looked desperate. He turned to his aides, including June and Mina. "What do we do?" he whispered fiercely. "We have nothing to show them." June felt a knot in his stomach. He looked around the chamber at the gathered aliens. Here were beings who could smell fear, sense body heat from a mile away, hear a heartbeat across a room. They valued strength above all else. And humanity, in their eyes, had none. He watched as the first volunteer stepped forward. It was Vor of the Hroth. The great bear-like creature closed his eyes. A hollow projector in the center of the room activated, pulling not just images, but sensations from his mind. A cold wind blew through the chamber. The scent of snow and pine filled the air. Everyone saw through Vor's eyes, the endless white plain, the burning in the lungs from the run, the single set of tracks leading over a ridge. They felt the bone-deep certainty of the hunter, the patience that lasted for weeks, and finally, the explosive, powerful thrill of the final charge. It was not cruel. It was necessary, pure, and honest. When it ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then, a respectful rumble moved through the crowd. That was true instinct. That was survival. June's heart sank. How could humanity compete with that? They had great stories, yes, but a shared, primal memory? They had myths and legends, but not something so raw and real. He saw the looks from the other delegations. They were glancing at the humans with pity, or worse, dismissal. The prey animals had no place in this contest of true predators as the next species. The aquatic Tellan, prepared for their recall, June's stomach growled quietly. He had missed lunch because of the long session. He thought longingly of the sandwich he had brought from home, still in his bag under his seat. A simple thing.
Ham, cheese, pickles.
Right now, it seemed a million miles away, and far more real than this struggle for a title. He did not understand. He had no way of knowing that his quiet hunger, and the simple act he would soon perform to fix it, was about to change everything. One by one, the species performed the ritual of recall. The grand chamber of the Aegis became a theater of primal terror and ancient survival. Kim June watched, his training as an observer fighting against a growing sense of human insignificance. After Vor's memory of the endless hunt, the aquatic Tellan took the center. Their delegate was a being of flowing membranes and soft blue light. When their recall began, the air in the room grew heavy and damp. A deep, subaudible thrum vibrated through the floor. Suddenly, the holographic space was filled with an ocean so vast it had no end. The sensation was not of swimming, but of being the ocean itself. Then, from the abyss below, a colossal shadow rose, a living storm of teeth and hunger. The Tellan memory was not of hunting a single creature, but of becoming the bait and the trap. They shared the feeling of channeling their own bioelectricity, of building a collective charge within the school, of the sudden, terrifying release. The hologram flashed with blinding light, and every being in the room felt the simultaneous, coordinated death of 1,000 small lives to feed the one. It was a harvest of lightning and fear. When it faded, the silent respect in the chamber was even deeper. The SS Lith was next. The serpentine being did not close its eyes. It simply stared ahead, and a dry, scaly scent filled the air. The memory was one of absolute stillness. The view was from a crevice in hot rocks, watching a furry creature drink from a pool. There was no emotion, no patience, just pure calculation. Then a strike faster than thought. The shared sensation was not of impact, but of the venom flooding into prey, a cold, chemical fire that locked muscles and stopped hearts in seconds. It was efficiency perfected, death as a simple biological transaction. A few of the more mammalian species shifted uncomfortably. June took notes, his fingers trembling slightly. He wrote words like collective predation and neurotoxic efficiency. Next to him, Lee Mina was frozen, her datapad forgotten in her lap. Ambassador Park Day had stopped trying to speak. He just sat, his face pale, understanding the scale of what they faced. The Gora were different. They were small, with large, luminous eyes. Their recall was silent. It began as a feeling of loneliness, of being small in a dark forest. Then, a pulse of warmth, connection. The memory was not from one perspective, but from six. The Gora pack moved as one mind. They shared the sensation of surrounding a large, horned beast, not with physical force, but with projected fear. They made the creature see monsters in the shadows, hear roars from empty air. They poured psychic terror into its mind until it ran, heart bursting, off a cliff. The hunt was won before a single claw was raised. It was mental domination, clean and terrible. June felt a chill. This wasn't about strength or speed. It was about breaking a mind. Humanity's history had shadows of such cruelty, but not as a shared, celebrated instinct. Finally, it was the turn of the current alpha, Kaya the Silithid. She moved to the center, her jointed legs clicking on the floor. She did not activate the main hologram. Instead, a low hum came from her body. Every Silithid in her delegation hummed back, the same note. The memory that washed over the room was not visual. It was a pattern, a vibration. It was the feeling of being one of 1,000, connected by a single purpose. There was no I, only we. The sensation was of moving through a complex hive, each individual knowing its place without question. Then, the purpose shifted to the hunt. The shared feeling was of coordinating not by sight or sound, but by a perfect, instinctive understanding of space and movement. They experienced the moment 100 Silithid workers, acting as one, drove a massive tunneling creature into a waiting set of razor-sharp mandibles held by the queen soldier. It was a living machine, a clockwork of chitin and hunger, where the death of the prey was just a step in the process of feeding the whole. The memory ended with a deep, collective satisfaction. The hum of a full hive.it was overwhelming. It was the ultimate expression of the pack, perfected over millions of years. When the hum faded, the silence was absolute. Many delegates bowed their heads slightly toward Kaya. The display had been a powerful reminder of why the Silithids led. Then, all eyes turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Park Day stood up. He cleared his throat. June could see the sweat on his brow. Members of the conclave, he began, his voice trying for its earlier smoothness but cracking slightly. The human species honors these displays. We, too, have a history of survival. But our strength comes from our individual minds, our ability to adapt and plan together. We do not possess a single genetic memory. Instead, let me tell you of the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 men held a pass against an army, using terrain and courage. Or of the strategic genius of Admiral Nelson at Trafalgar. He spoke well. He painted pictures with his words. But as he talked, June saw the change in the room. The focused intensity that had been present during the recalls was gone. The Hroth Vor looked bored, his great head drooping. The SS Lith was cleaning a scale. Kaya's antennae twitched in a pattern June's notes said indicated polite disinterest. Park Day finished, his story of human bravery hanging in the air. He waited for a reaction. Kaya clicked softly. A stirring narrative, Ambassador. You tell it well. She paused, and her translated voice was flat. But it is a story. You speak of courage and genius. These are ideas. They are not instinct. Where is the hunger? Where is the feel of the wind telling you where the prey is? Where is the taste of the kill? For rumbled in agreement. You describe a clever trap. But who built the trap? A being with instinct. You admire the warriors, But what drove them to fight? The instinct to protect the pack. You show us the leaf, but not the root. The Telen representative pulsed with soft light. You have no recall. You have only a folklore. This ritual is to find the root, the deepest instinct. If you cannot show it, you do not have it. The message was final. The human delegation had failed the test. They would not be considered for the alpha role. They would be given support tasks, carrying equipment, managing non-critical systems. Pray work. A recess was called. The chamber erupted in noisy debate as species formed groups, arguing over whose recall was strongest. The humans were ignored. Park Day collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. It's a disaster, he muttered. June felt a deep emptiness, but it wasn't just professional shame. His stomach growled again, a loud, rude sound in the midst of the alien chatter. He realized he was shaking from low blood sugar. The intense sensory overload of the recalls had left him drained. He looked at the arguing aliens, at his defeated boss, at Mina's worried face. The complexity of it all was too much. He needed one simple human thing. Sir, June said softly to Ambassador Park. With permission, I need a moment. The sensory data, I need to clear my head. Park Day just waved a hand, not looking up. June stood. He walked quietly away from the human bench, away from the main crowd. He slipped through a side archway he had noted earlier, leading to a small, quiet observation lounge that overlooked the swirling colors of the ghost nebula. It was empty. Peace. He let out a long breath. Here, the noise was muted. He sat on a bench, the nebula painting his face in blues and purples. Then, with a feeling of small personal relief, he reached into his bag and pulled out a simple lunchbox. Inside, wrapped in paper, was his sandwich. He unwrapped it carefully. It was just ham and cheese with pickles and mustard on rye bread. Simple. Normal. He held it for a second, appreciating its familiar weight. Then, hungry and tired of grand galactic politics, he took a large, deliberate bite. The observation lounge was a bubble of quiet. Kim June chewed his sandwich and looked at the ghost nebula. It churned like a slow-motion storm, beautiful and deadly. He was glad to be away from the noise. He did not know he was being watched. When June left the main chamber, many eyes followed him. Not out of interest in him, but because every movement in the tense room was noted. The Silithid Kaya saw the human leave. Her compound eyes could track 100 things at once. Part of her attention stayed on the human's retreating form. It was not a conscious decision. It was her instinct to monitor all potential variables. Vor of the Hroth also noticed. His sense of smell was powerful. He had caught the faint, unfamiliar scent of cured meat and fermented grain from the human's bag earlier. When June left, that scent moved with him. Vor's curiosity, a hunter's curiosity about strange smells, was tickled. He focused his hearing, filtering out the chamber's arguments. He could hear the soft rustle of paper from the lounge, then a quiet, rhythmic sound. The other species, with their own sharp senses, also noted the departure. In a room full of posturing predators, the sudden exit of a weak member of the herd was noticeable. It was a small change in the pattern. To these beings, changes in pattern could mean danger or opportunity. So, while they argued, parts of their minds tracked the human in the other room. June took another bite. The rye bread was slightly stale, but the sharpness of the mustard and the saltiness of the ham were perfect. He ate with the focused attention of a person who values a small moment of peace. He was not rushing. He was not being polite. He was simply feeding himself. To Kaya's eyes, this was fascinating. Her people ate by delivering predigested nutrients to a central hive chamber. Eating was a private, functional act for maintenance. But she had studied other species. She saw the human select his food, hold it, and consume it with deliberate motions. There was no fear in his posture. He sat with his back partly to the open archway, a vulnerable position. Yet he showed no signs of alarm. His entire being was focused on the consumption of another creature's flesh. He did not look around for threats. He did not eat quickly to hide. He claimed that space and that moment completely for the act of eating. To a predator, that level of calm during consumption spoke of a deep, unshakable sense of security, of dominance. Vor listened. The sound of chewing was steady, unhurried. He heard the soft crunch of the pickles, the slight, moist sound of the bread. There were no nervous swallows, no pauses to check the environment. It was the sound of a creature completely in control of its meal. In the wild, only the apex predator eats without fear. The bear eats the fish at the riverbank, ignoring the birds. The human was ignoring the galactic conclave. The sheer mental strength that required was staggering to Vor. To be surrounded by greater physical powers and yet be so unconcerned that you focus on a sandwich. Other senses were engaged across the chamber. The SS Lith tasted the air with its forked tongue. It detected the protein molecules of the ham, the acetic acid from the pickles, the complex compounds of the fermented mustard and bread. It recognized the scent picture of a processed, crafted meal. This was not tearing into fresh kill. This was taking the kill, transforming it with fire and thyme and other ingredients, and then consuming it with ritualistic calm. This implied a distance from the raw act of killing that was somehow more terrifying. It was not hunger of the moment. It was a planned, certain expectation of consumption. The Gora, with their psychic sensitivity, felt the human's emotional state from a distance. They expected to sense anxiety, shame, defeat from the rejected delegate. Instead, they touched the edges of a quiet, profound satisfaction, a simple, bodily contentment. There was no malice, no aggression, just a pure and focused fulfillment of need. In their experience, only the most confident, well-fed predators felt such clean, uncomplicated satisfaction after a hunt. Unknowingly, June was performing a display more compelling than any holographic recall. The recalls were memories, stories of the past. This was happening now. This was a living example of instinctual behavior. And it was an instinct the conclave had never properly considered. The ultimate predator is not the one who hunts with the most fury. It is the one who eats with the most peace. June finished the sandwich. He wiped his fingers carefully on the paper, then folded it. He took a small drink of water from his flask. The entire process took about 4 minutes. In those 4 minutes, the understanding in the main chamber shifted. The arguments died down. Without a word being spoken, the delegates turned their attention from each other to the archway. The evidence was undeniable. They had just witnessed a being perform a pure, instinctual act of an apex species. He had felt a biological need, hunger. He had secured his sustenance, the sandwich. He had consumed it in a potentially hostile environment, the conclave, with total focus and zero visible fear. He had then cleaned himself after. It was a perfect, complete cycle of predation, from desire to completion. And he had done it while they were arguing about what instinct was. The contrast was embarrassing. They had been sharing grand memories of epic hunts, while a living example of supreme predatory confidence was happening in the next room, quietly eating bread and meat. Kaya felt a strange hum in her carapace. Her own recall was of the perfect hive, the machine of the swarm. But the human's act was different. It was the confidence of the individual who knows, deep down, that he is on top. It was not about the pack. It was about the self. And from that confident self, she realized, a stronger pack could be led. An alpha is first an individual. Vor understood strength. The human strength was not in his arm or his tooth. It was in his mind. The mental strength to ignore 50 arguing predator species to eat a meal was a strength Vor could scarcely imagine. That was the strength of a true alpha. The one who is not distracted by the noise, who tends to his own needs to remain strong for the pack. June put his lunchbox away. He felt better. The food had grounded him. He stood up, ready to go back and face the disappointment. He had no plan, only a sense of quiet resignation that he walked back through the archway into the grand chamber. The scene that greeted him was completely still and silent. The arguments had stopped. Every single delegate, all 50 species, was turned in his direction. And every one of them had an arm, a tentacle, a claw, or a wing raised, pointing directly at him. Kim June stopped walking. His brain froze. He looked at the forest of pointing limbs, then at the shocked faces of Ambassador Park and Lee Mina. He slowly looked down at himself, checking if he had spilled mustard on his gray uniform. He found nothing. "What?" he began, his voice a dry whisper in the total silence. "What is happening?" The silence in the grand chamber was absolute. Kim Jun stood frozen, the weight of 50 alien stares pressing down on him. The pointing limbs did not waver. It was like being caught in a forest of frozen, accusing trees. Lee Mina's mouth was open. Ambassador Park Day slowly rose from his seat, his face a mask of total confusion. "I demand an explanation," he said, his voice too loud in the quiet. "Why are you pointing at my cultural observer?" Kaya, the Silithid, was the first to lower her claw. The clicking of her mandibles was the only sound. "The explanation is clear," her translator stated flatly. "The ritual is complete. The Alpha has been found." June finally found his voice. "Me?" The word came out as a squeak. He cleared his throat. "There is a mistake. I am not an ambassador. I am not a soldier. I observe cultures." Vor of the Hroth gave a low, rumbling chuckle. It was a friendly sound, but it made June's bones vibrate. "You observe." "Yes. And we observed you." He lowered his big, furred arm. "The recall shows us ancient instinct. But instinct is not a memory. It is a living thing. We saw the living thing in you." "I was just eating a sandwich," June said, utterly lost. "Exactly," hissed the SS Lith representative. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air near June as if sampling the last traces of the meal. "You were just eating. In the heart of a political storm, surrounded by beings who could break you, you felt a need. You satisfied it. You did not ask permission. You did not show fear. You simply consumed. This is the core, the unthinking truth of a predator." June looked desperately at Ambassador Park. The ambassador stepped forward, trying to regain control. "This is a misunderstanding of human behavior. My colleague was hungry. He ate a small meal. This is not a display of leadership. It is basic biology." "Yes," Kaya clicked. "Basic biology. The biology that comes before thought. The biology that says, I must be strong to face the challenge." You, ambassador, spoke of plans and history. Your words were complex, like the patterns on a leaf. But she pointed a claw again at June, showed us the trunk of the tree, the simple, strong truth. He tends to himself first. A weak leader cannot have a strong pack. An alpha knows this in its bones. The other species began to murmur, a wave of agreement moving through them. The Telen pulsed with soft blue light. In the deep ocean, the largest predator moves the slowest. It does not chase. It is sure. It eats what it needs and ignores the small fish. This human had the same certainty. June felt a hot flush of embarrassment. "It was rye bread and leftover ham," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. "You transformed your kill," the Esselith said, fascinated. "You did not just tear flesh. You preserved it. You combined it with the seeds of grass and the sour fruits of the vine. You crafted your consumption. This is not mere eating. This is domination over nature itself. You make the world into your meal. This is the highest form of the predatory instinct." The logic was insane. Yet, as June looked at the faces of the alien delegates, he saw no mockery. He saw respect. A deep, solemn respect that had been completely absent when Ambassador Park was giving his speeches. "The conclave law is clear," Kaya announced, turning to address the room. "The alpha for the expedition is the one who demonstrates the most potent and effective predatory instinct. The ritual of recall is one path, but the living act supersedes the memory. I, as current alpha, acknowledge the display. I yield the position." A formal hum came from the Silithid delegation. It was a sound of agreement. "The Hroth follow the strong," Vor rumbled, placing a massive fist over his heart in a salute directed at June. "We follow this instinct." One by one, the other species gave their signs of agreement. A flash of light, a color change, a low whistle. The decision was being made without a vote. It was being made by a shared, instinctual understanding. Ambassador Park was sputtering. You cannot be serious. He is a researcher. He has no command experience. Command experience can be learned, Kaya replied. Instinct cannot. He has the root. We will help him grow the branches. June's mind was racing. He saw Mina staring at him, her eyes wide with a mix of horror and a strange, dawning hope. He saw his boss, a capable diplomat, being completely sidelined. He saw the mission to the terrifying Ghost Nebula, and himself somehow in charge of it. A cold wave of panic washed over him. This was a disaster in the making. He would get everyone killed. He held up his hands. Please, stop. This is a mistake. I am not what you think I am. My instinct right now is to run away from this room. Vor's chuckle came again. A good instinct. To know when you are outmatched is wisdom. But you did not run. You stood your ground. You even questioned us. A prey animal would have submitted. June realized that every word he said was being twisted into further proof of his hidden strength. His denial was humility. His fear was caution. His confusion was deep strategy. He was trapped in their story. Kaya approached him, her graceful, insectal steps clicking on the floor. She stopped before him, looking down with her multifaceted eyes. What is your name, human? Kim June, he said, forcing himself to meet her gaze. Kim June, she repeated. The Alpha for the Ghost Nebula expedition. The pack has chosen. The title hung in the air. It felt like a heavy coat made of lead, dropped onto June's shoulders. He wanted to shrug it off, but he knew it was impossible. He looked from Kaya to Vor, to the dozens of other alien faces now looking to him. Their expressions were expectant. They were waiting for his first order. The leader of the pack. His mouth was dry. His mind was blank. All he could think about was the ridiculousness of it all. He had come here to take notes, and now he was in command because of a ham sandwich. He took a deep, slow breath. It was the same breath he took before starting a complex analysis. He did not know what an alpha would say, but he knew what a researcher would do when faced with a new, confusing problem. He turned to Mina. Her presence was a tiny piece of home in the madness. Mina, he said, his voice firmer than he felt. Please compile the full sensory logs of all the recalls. I need to review the data on each species' environmental strengths and perceived fears. Mina blinked, then snapped into action, her fingers flying over her data pad. Yes, sir. Then he looked at Kaya and Vor. I need to understand the tools I have, he said. It was a simple, honest statement. We will meet in 1 hour. Please have your senior survival specialists and your hunters ready to brief me, not on why you are strong, but on what, in a place like the Ghost Nebula, would make you weak. A new silence followed, different from the last. This was a silence of surprise, then of deepening respect. The Alpha's first command was not to boast, or to plan an attack. It was to learn about his pack, to understand their vulnerabilities so he could protect them. Vor's rumble was pure approval. A wise leader tends to the weakest link in the pack. Yes, we will be ready. Kaya gave a slow, precise nod. The hive will provide its knowledge. As the delegates began to move, talking in low tones, June stood still in the middle of the chamber. The pointing had stopped, but the weight of their expectation remained. He had just given his first order. It had felt like the only sensible thing to do. He had no idea that by asking about their fears, he had just passed another unspoken test. The hour passed in a blur for Kim June. He sat in a small room off the main chamber with Mina. Data pads were spread out around them like fallen leaves. This is impossible, Mina whispered, her eyes scanning a report on Silithid hive mind communication. They think you're some primal genius. But you're just you. Right now, just me needs to not get a team of 50 aliens killed in a space cloud, June said quietly. His mind was racing, but in a familiar way. This was a research problem. A very dangerous, live research problem. The subject was survival. Mina had done well. She had pulled every public file on the species in the expedition. Not the proud military summaries, but the dry, technical documents about biology, environmental tolerances, and psychology. Okay, June said, taking a deep breath. We start with what we know. The ghost nebula disrupts machines and sensors. So it becomes a problem of biology, of instincts. So you're going to lead with instinct? Mina asked, doubtful. No, June said. I'm going to translate instinct into a plan. They see instinct as magic. I see it as a set of data points. A Hrotha's endurance is a data point. A Silithid's hive coordination is a data point. My job is to arrange the data points so they don't cancel each other out. There was a soft chime at the door. The hour was up. The meeting was not in the grand chamber. It was in a smaller, circular room with a low table. Kaya and Vor were there, as were two other beings. A lithe, feline-looking representative from the swift Lith, and a quiet, glowing Gora. These were the specialists. June entered, with Mina close behind carrying the data pads. He saw the expectant look in their eyes. They were waiting for a display of fierce leadership, for a bold plan. He did not sit at the head of the table. He sat on one side, making it a circle. Thank you for coming, he said. Please sit. They did, but the expectation still hung in the air. I asked for your weaknesses, June began. Not to shame you, but because in a place where our tools will fail, our weaknesses will be the first thing the environment attacks. If I do not know them, I cannot protect the pack. Vor leaned forward, his large nostrils flaring. A leader who admits he does not know everything? A leader who knows asking questions is better than making mistakes, June replied. He looked at the Lith. You are fast. Your strike is precise. What slows you down? The Lith blinked its vertical pupils. It was not used to such a direct, clinical question from a leader. Cold, it hissed after a moment. Our blood does not heat itself. We need external warmth. In prolonged cold, we become slow. Very slow. June nodded and glanced at Mina, who made a note. And you? He asked the Gora. The small being's skin flickered with soft colors. Chaos, it said, its voice a whisper in their minds. Our connection is a clear stream. Loud, random noise, psychic static. It is like mud in the water. It hurts. It confuses. June turned to Kaya. The hive is strong when connected. What breaks the connection? Kaya's antennae twitched. Strong electromagnetic fields can disrupt our harmonic frequency. We become individuals. It is disorienting. Our coordination fails. Finally, he looked at Vor. You are strong. You can endure anything. What can you not endure? Vor thought for a long moment. Being still, he grumbled. When there is no trail, no movement, no problem to push against. My people, we need purpose. In empty waiting, our minds turn on themselves. We get angry, reckless. June listened, absorbing it all. He was not judging. He was building a map in his mind. Thank you. This is more valuable than any list of weapons. The specialists looked at each other, confused but intrigued. No alpha had ever wanted this information before. Alphas used strengths. They ignored weaknesses. Now, June said, the Ghost Nebula. Reports say it has zones of extreme cold, pockets of psychic energy from dead stars, and waves of electromagnetic distortion. He pointed at the Lith. You will not go into cold zones alone. You will be paired with a Hroth or another species with high body heat. He looked at the Gora. Your team will stay away from the psychic storm areas. You will be our Clearwater scouts, kept safe from the mud. He turned to Kaya. Your units will have Faraday-style cage materials in their gear to protect your connection when the EM fields hit. Lastly, he looked at Vor. Your people will be our mobile units. You will always have a task, a path to clear, a load to carry, a perimeter to watch. No empty waiting. The room was silent. The specialists were not just listening. They were staring. It was a simple plan, but it was a plan of protection, of care. He had taken their deepest vulnerabilities and, in minutes, devised a strategy to shield them. To a predator, having your weakness known is dangerous. Having it actively guarded by your alpha was unheard of. Kaya broke the silence, her clicks thoughtful. You do not place us as blades to be used. You place us as parts of a body to be kept healthy. Is a brain less important than a fist? June asked. If the Gora are confused, we are all blind. If the SS Lith are frozen, we lose our speed. If the Hroth are bored, they make mistakes. If the hive is broken, we lose our best coordination. My instinct, he said, using their word carefully, is to keep the whole body working. Vor let out a long, slow breath that smelled of earth and pine. My old alpha would say a weak link should be cast aside. You say a weak link must be made strong. This is a new thought. It is an old human thought, June said. The pack survives when it carries its injured, not when it leaves them behind. The meeting ended shortly after. The specialists left, moving with a new, purposeful energy. They had a plan that saw them, truly saw them, flaws and all. When they were gone, Mina let out a huge sigh. I thought they would laugh. Or get angry. So did I, June admitted, rubbing his temples. But it was the only thing I knew how to do. Treat them like a complex, dangerous ecosystem. Balance it. You balanced it by asking about their feelings, Mina said, a small smile touching her lips. The galaxy's toughest predators. And you asked if they get bored or get headaches. Before June could answer, the door chimed again. It was Ambassador Park Day. He looked exhausted and serious. June, a word. Mina gathered the data pads and slipped out, giving June a worried look. Park Day did not sit. The Conclave Council has formally confirmed you as Expedition Alpha. It is done. The ship leaves in 12 hours. June just nodded. There was nothing to say. The fate of our standing in the galaxy is on your shoulders, Park Day said, his voice low. Do you understand what they see in you? They see a monster. A perfect, calm, eating in the face of danger monster. You must be that monster, June, or we are all finished. June looked at his ambassador, this man who had worked for years to build human prestige with words. Words had failed. Now it was down to a sandwich and a plan to keep the bored Hroth busy. I am not a monster, sir, June said quietly, but I am good at solving problems. I will solve this one. As Park Day left, June was alone. He looked at his hands. They were the hands of a scholar. They had never held a weapon. Soon, they would be responsible for the lives of creatures who lived by the tooth and the claw. He felt the fear then, cold and solid in his stomach. It was not a fear of the nebula or of the aliens. It was a fear of the role, of the terrible, hungry story they had built around him. He wished, more than anything, for another sandwich. But there was no time. The pack was waiting. The expedition ship was called the Pathfinder. It was not a warship. It was a sturdy, functional craft built by the Hroth. Inside, it smelled of ozone, fur, and the faint, sweet smell of silithid hive resin. Kim June stood on the command deck, feeling completely out of place. Around him, the specialists worked. A Hroth monitored power levels. A silithid checked communication harmonics. They moved with a quiet efficiency, but June could feel their attention on him. They were waiting to see what their new alpha would do. Mina stood at his side, a solid human anchor in the sea of aliens. All teams report ready, she said softly, reading from a data pad. The technology still worked here on the edge of the nebula. Soon it would not. June took a breath. He activated the shipwide comm, a system of lights and basic sound tones designed to work when advanced systems failed. This is June. We enter the nebula in 1 minute. Remember your pairs. Remember your zones. Trust your partner, not your screen. Let's go home safe. It was a simple message. Too simple, he thought. But Mina gave him a small, firm nod. The Pathfinder slid into the swirling colors of the Ghost Nebula. It was like diving into a cloudy, electric sea. Outside the viewports, the universe vanished. Inside the ship, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air, the sound of straining systems. Primary sensors failing. The Hroth operator growled. Switching to secondary. Clicked to silithid. A moment later, A panel sparked. Secondary is down. Go to manual sweep, June said, his voice calm. This was expected. Use the physical scanners. Look with your eyes. The ship pushed deeper. The strange environment of the nebula began to act. In one corridor, a wave of cold seeped through the hull. The SS Lith on patrol there began to slow, its movements becoming stiff. Just as planned, its Hroth partner, a massive female named Grar, noticed. She moved closer, her large body radiating heat. Stay near, little knife, Grar rumbled. The SS Lith pressed close, its slow shivering easing. June watched the report come in on a basic light board. A green light for the SS Lith Hroth pair. His plan was working. Then, the first problem. They entered a zone of psychic static. It was like a silent scream. On the deck, the Gora scouts cried out, small hands clutching their heads. Their clear stream of thought was full of jagged noise. Pull them back, June ordered. Mina, guide the Telen team forward. Their electrical senses might pick up the physical shape of the space. The Gora were led to a quieter part of the ship, their pain fading. The Telen, pulsing with gentle light, moved ahead. They could not read minds, but they could feel the shape of energy. They navigated the ship through the psychic storm like pilots using sonar. Another green light. June felt a tiny spark of hope. The artifact's signal was a steady, low pulse on their most basic directional finder. It was like a mechanical heartbeat leading them on. They followed it for hours, the crew working together in the strange, dim half-light of the failing ship. Then, they found the chamber. It was a vast natural cave inside a floating asteroid. The Pathfinder settled at its mouth. No ship could fly inside. They would have to go on foot. June gathered the team at the airlock, 20 beings from 10 different species. He wore a simple environment suit. He looked at them, their faces hidden behind helmets or masks. The technology is dead here, he said, his voice carried by suit-to-suit radio. Now we live by the rules we made. Stay with your partner. Watch for the signs we talked about. We go in, we secure the artifact, we come back. Slow is safe. They moved into the cave. It was beautiful and terrifying. Crystals glowed with their own inner light, casting long shadows. Strange, energy-based flora pulsed on the walls. It was completely silent. They found the artifact in the center of the cavern. It was a smooth, dark stone pillar, covered in swirling patterns that seemed to move. It hummed with a power that made their teeth ache as the Hroth moved forward to secure it. The cave woke up from the shadows, a shape unfolded. It was not a living thing, not as they understood it. It was a being of coherent energy, a predator native to the nebula. It looked like a shifting cloud of lightning and dark smoke. It had been sleeping wrapped around the artifact. Now it was awake and angry. The creature did not scream, pulsed. Each pulse was a wave of disorientation and fear. Suit systems fizzed and died. The Gora cried out again, overwhelmed. The Silithid coordination hum broke into confused individual clicks. Chaos. This was the moment June feared. Kaya, her instincts taking over, raised her claws. Attack! Protect the Alpha! Vor roared, stepping forward to put himself between the creature and the team. Form a wall. This was their way. Fight. Meet force with force. But June saw it in slow motion. They were blind, confused, and their strongest fighters were about to charge an energy being in a cave full of unstable crystals. It was a path to disaster. No! June's voice cracked over the radio. It was not a shout of command, but of pure urgency. Everyone froze. He was not looking at the creature. He was looking at the cave. He saw the glowing crystals, the pulsing plants, the way the energy beast was tied to the artifact's hum. This was not a hunt. This was an ecosystem. Fua, hold position. June snapped. Kaya, pull your people back. Now. His orders were direct, clear, and against all their instincts. But he was the Alpha. After a painful second, they obeyed. The Hroth held their ground, growling. The Silithid skittered back. The energy creature pulsed again, drifting toward them. Mina, June said, his voice tight. The food paste from the Hroth ration packs. And a power cell from a dead scanner. Now. Mina didn't hesitate. She scrambled, handing him a tube of thick, high-calorie paste and a small, cylindrical power cell. June's hands moved quickly. He smeared the sticky, smelly paste all over the power cell. Then he turned to the Telen, the electrical beings. Can you give this a small charge? Make it glow. Like prey. The Telen understood. One touched the cell. It flickered, then shone with a bright, enticing light. The food paste gave it a strong, meaty scent signature in the infrared and chemical spectrum. June didn't throw it at the creature. He threw it past the creature, deep into a side tunnel of the cave. The glowing, smelly power cell clattered and rolled away. The energy beast stopped. It turned its formless head. It sensed the bright, juicy, electrical signal of the prey. The artifact was its home, but this was food. With a final, confused pulse toward the team, it flowed away into the tunnel after the cell. Now, June said. Vor, get the artifact. Kaya, cover him. Everyone else back to the ship. Move. The next minutes were a controlled rush. Vor and two other Hroth lifted the heavy stone pillar. The Silithid formed a guard around them, their backs to the wall. The team moved in good order back through the cave. They heard a distant, muffled pop from the tunnel as the power cell shorted out. A frustrated pulse of energy echoed through the rock. But the creature did not return. They loaded the artifact onto the Pathfinder. The ship's engines whined to life. As they pulled away from the asteroid, June stood on the command deck, looking back at the swirling nebula. They had not fired a single shot. They had not lost a single being. Vor came to stand beside him, his fur matted with cave dust. He looked at June for a long time. Then he placed his big fist over his heart again. You did not fight the storm, the Hroth said, his voice full of awe. You gave it a snack. You understood its hunger. On the other side, Kaya clicked softly. The hive attacked the problem. You understood the problem was not us. It was separate. You diverted it. She dipped her head. This is a new kind of strength, Kim June. June just felt tired. His hands were still shaking. He had not been brave. He had just seen a different set of data points. Beast, food, battery, tunnel, and put them together. He turned to Mina. Status of the crew? All present, she said, a huge smile breaking across her face. A few bruises, some headaches. Everyone is here. June nodded. That was the only data point that truly mattered. The pack was whole. He had kept his first and only promise to them. Go home safe. The return to the conclave vessel Aegis was not like their departure. News traveled faster than ships. By the time the Pathfinder docked, the entire station knew the mission was a full success. They also knew there had been 0 casualties. Kim June walked down the ramp, feeling the strange, clean air of the station. He was still in his dusty suit. Behind him, the mixed-species crew moved with a loose, easy confidence. They talked to each other, Hroth to Silithid, Gora to Telen. The rigid formality was gone. The grand chamber was packed. Every species representative was there. The silence was heavy, but this time it was a silence of waiting, not of judgment. Ambassador Park Day was at the front of the human delegation. His face was tight with anxiety and hope. Lee Mina stood just behind June, a steady presence. Kaya and Vor stepped forward with June. They did not let him walk alone. They flanked him, a living honor guard. This was not planned. It was their instinct. The artifact, the dark stone pillar, was carried into the center of the chamber by the Hroth team. They set it down with a soft thud. Its humming filled the space, a sound of ancient power. The head of the Conclave Council, an elderly being from a species of floating gas bags, spoke first. The expedition is returned. The artifact is secured. The Alpha has led. Its voice was like wind through trees. Report, Alpha June. June stepped forward. He felt very small. He cleared his throat. The mission was successful because of the crew. They followed the plan. They adapted. They trusted each other. The credit is theirs. It was a simple, honest statement. To the humans, it sounded like a modest leader giving praise to his team. To the conclave, it was a profound revelation. An alpha did not share credit. An alpha took the glory. This was another new thing. Vor stepped forward, his rumble commanding attention. The human is wrong, he said. June's heart sank. But Vor continued. The credit is his. We followed the plan because he made a plan that saw us. Not as tools but as beings. He knew the SS Lith would get cold. He knew the Gora would get headaches. He knew the Hroth get restless. A soft chuckle moved through the room. He built a pack where the weak part was made strong. In the cave, when the energy beast came, our instinct was to fight. His instinct was to understand. He saw it was not an enemy to kill, but an animal to distract. He fed it a battery and some lunch paste. Laughter rippled through the chamber now. A mixture of clicks, rumbles, and whistles. It was not mocking laughter. It was the laughter of relief and admiration. Kaya clicked for silence. His predatory instinct is not for show. It is not for memory. It is for use. It is the instinct to preserve the pack at all costs. To use any tool, even his own food, to ensure survival. This is the highest form of the instinct. The Silithid swarm acknowledges this. We formally yield the title of alpha species to humanity. We follow this alpha. A wave of formal statements followed. One by one, each of the 50 species voiced their agreement. The title passed. It was not taken by force. It was given with respect. The head of the council floated closer. Kim June of humanity. The conclave recognizes you as alpha-proved. Your species holds the title. Do you accept the duty to lead in times of common peril? All eyes were on June. He felt the weight of it, the history. He thought of the sandwich, the cave, the scared Gora, the bored Hroth. He was not a warrior. He would never be the kind of leader they expected. He looked at Ambassador Park, who gave a small, urgent nod. Accept it. The nod screamed. June turned back to the council. I accept the duty for my species, he said. Then he paused. But I have one condition. A shocked murmur went up. No one made conditions on this honor. The duty must stay with me, June said. I am the one you saw. I am the one who led. Do not give the title to another human who gives great speeches or wins great battles. Give it to the human who is sent to watch and learn. The one who sits in the corner. Give it to the observer. That is the human you need for this job. Not a general. A keeper of the pack. The silence was deep. They were trying to understand. An alpha who did not want to create more alphas. Who wanted to keep the title small and specific. Finally, the council head spoke. A unique condition. But the alpha who returns a full pack from the Ghost Nebula may set his own rules. It is agreed. The title is vested in you, Kim June, observer. For as long as you live, or until you choose to yield it. It was over. The formalities continued, but the core truth was settled. As the chamber began to empty, June finally had a moment to breathe. Ambassador Park approached him, his face a storm of emotions. You did it, he said, his voice thick. But, a condition? You tied it to a job title? It's the only way it makes sense, sir, June said, tired. They didn't choose humanity. They chose a specific human behavior. We need to be honest about what that is. Vor and Kaya approached. Vor clapped a massive hand on June's shoulder, almost knocking him over. You will need to eat more, little alpha, he rumbled, grinning, to keep your strength up.
Kaya clicked.
The hive would be interested in the recipe for the distraction paste. It was efficient. June almost smiled. I'll have Mina send it to you. Later, in the quiet human quarters, June sat alone. Mina brought him a cup of tea. What do we do now? She asked. Now, June said, sipping the hot drink, we go home. We write our reports. And we make sure that the next human observer who comes here is very, very good at their job. And you,
Mina pressed.
You're the alpha of the galactic conclave. June looked at the wall, as if he could see through it to the stars and all the strange, wonderful, dangerous beings out there. I'm the guy who knows that the real power isn't in being the strongest predator, he said softly. It's in knowing what every predator needs and what they fear. That's just good observation. He put down his tea. His stomach growled. He thought of the station's food synthesizer. The memory of his simple sandwich from home was a powerful comfort. First, he said, standing up, I'm going to see if the station's kitchen can figure out how to make a proper ham and cheese on rye. A leader has to keep his strength up. Mina laughed, the sound bright and human in the sterile room. It was a good sound. It was the sound of a pack, safe and together, because one of them had been quietly paying attention.